Publishing a game on Steam was one of the worst experiences of my life. These are the reasons. Creating a video game was fun. Working on it is fulfilling, you can implement your ideas step by step. Of course, new problems keep coming up, especially if, like me, you start without any IT background, but all of these problems are solvable. You just have to search a bit and eventually you'll find a solution. These are constant small moments of success. At the beginning it is somewhat overwhelming how much there is to know, and it takes a while before you're even able to recognize a problem as such and solve it. The beginning was a really great experience. On the advice of a friend, I taught myself Python and wrote small applications for personal use. When my father was still alive, I visited him every week, usually for 2 days. So that I could continue playing my current game during the time, I wrote a program that reads all my save games and, if they were changed, uploads them to the cloud. This way I always had access to my latest save state. For my wife I created an invoicing program. She used to spend a long time creating invoices, and thanks to my program we were able to greatly speed up the process. In 2024 I worked in a warehouse for sports clothing. We received orders, packed and shipped goods, and added new collections to the system when they were handed over to us. This process of adding new collections was always the same, but very time consuming. Since I was good friends with the boss, I offered to write a script that automates the process. We received a CSV for each collection, so automation was simple. He was happy, I was happy, and before we could even use the script once, the fashion company terminated us for economic reasons and my boss had to close his company. I created all kinds of small applications to make my life easier. To create a game, I then switched to C#. Of course, switching from Python to C# takes some getting used to at first, because the syntax is quite different. But this learning process was also quite fun, especially the number of unknown unknowns, which often makes life difficult in hindsight, was overwhelming. But there was always that moment of success when something suddenly clicked in your head and you finally understood what was causing the issue. Video games were always a nice escape from life for me. I never really had a connection to other people. Most of them seemed so foreign to me and I to them. So it worked out well that I was born in a time when the electronic entertainment industry was just taking off. The possibility of playing alone and having fun was something beautiful for me. As a child I liked building Lego alone, and as I got older all the single player games were exactly right for me. So it was always a dream to create a game myself one day. Although I knew what kind of game I wanted to make, I also knew that it was not wise to start with it. It would be too big, too ambitious, and failure would have been certain from the very first input. So I first learned how the basics work. I had various prototypes, but I found all of them boring and discarded them. During one exercise, it was about how to position the camera in 3-dimensional space and about the basics of the physics system, I was presented the idea of a marble game. I liked this topic so much, and since I had never played a game like this before, I wanted to build my own version of it. It was a very good start because the scope was manageable, the game principle was clearly defined, and I could be creative within those boundaries. It was a classic marble game in which you have to knock the opponent's marbles off the field. In addition to the ability to simply push the marble down, I came up with several other abilities to make the system more varied. Different enemy types respond differently to abilities, so that as a player you need a strategy to succeed. Then I came up with other arenas that loosen up and modify the basic principle. The interplay between enemy types, power-ups and level design entertained me very well. It was exactly my cup of tea that everything had a purpose, followed a strategy, and you could create a perfect build for each level and each game mode that matched your own playstyle. It was simply fun to work on it, and I also greatly enjoyed playing the game. Aesthetically, it looked like crap, but I didn't really care. Simple shapes, simple textures, that doesn't bother me because I'm only interested in pure mechanical gameplay. Since I wanted to try my hand at my own video game after losing my job, I was naturally a burden to my wife and children. I studied and practiced 2 days a week and spent the rest doing housework so that I wouldn't be completely useless. That was a good compromise. I made progress, could learn a lot of new things, had fun programming, and my wife was well relieved with the housework. After half a year, the game was already quite advanced, and I was actually already satisfied with it. Then I thought about polishing it further, making it more accessible to others, and simply offering it on a platform. That's why I asked some friends and the son of my Taekwondo teacher if they would test the game. I received some feedback, made improvements, and in the end, everyone was satisfied. They said they had fun with it and liked the game. I talked with them about what price would be appropriate, and the price of $5 emerged. Since I get all my games on GOG, I offered them the game. Why would someone like me think that a platform like GOG would even remotely be interested in my work? I actually assumed that my title is completely insufficient to earn a place on the platform. But during a sale, I browsed GOG a bit and came across The Divine Invasion. It looked like a pure asset flip, and the reviews reinforced that impression. I watched a let's play of it and was shocked by the poor functionality and the lack of care with which it was put together. I thought that my game might not be anything special, but at least it worked and wasn't thrown together so carelessly. They could say no at most, and if even The Divine Invasion deserved a place and sold, I could just try. At the bottom of the GOG page it explicitly says, "Submit your game," and I understood that as an invitation. They rejected my title, and that was basically the end of it for me. But since I had already invested so much effort, I thought I might as well offer it on Steam. At the time I didn't know how Steam works. I thought you simply send them a trailer, like with GOG, and they say yes or no. I had a very bad feeling when I realized that you basically just publish it yourself once you've paid the $100 fee, and I should have listened to that feeling, but I didn't. So I integrated Steam into my game. In doing so, I noticed that I could offer leaderboards and thought that was a really great idea. When my mother was slowly being consumed by cancer a few years earlier, I needed something to distract me, to take my mind off things. During that time I played Shadow Warrior on the PlayStation 4. On the highest difficulty you had to be completely focused to succeed. And that was exactly the right distraction. Back then I even managed to reach number 1 on the global leaderboard. That was a great feeling. But after my mother's death I didn't continue playing. Even though I have since been pushed far down the rankings, I was number 1 for a while. I wanted to give people the same cool feeling in my game and implemented leaderboards. I also looked around on Steam a bit to get to know the platform. I came across titles like Coconut Simulator. It's not really a game. The Windows 95 screensaver with the fish offers more action. There's no input, no gameplay, it's simply a resource-intensive wallpaper. Well, I thought if something that isn't even a game sells, then I should surely find also a target audience. At least my game actually had gameplay and music made by me. In November-December 2025, everything was finished. The Steam page was set up, the game was done, and it was supposed to be released in January. On January the 5th, 2026, I pressed the publish button and was curious what would happen. And nothing happened. Absolutely nothing. I actually assumed that at least my friends who had tested the game for me and said it was good would buy it, but that didn't happen. So I sat down by myself and played it. I just didn't want it to be ignored completely at launch. I'm not angry that none of my friends except one bought it. No one is obligated and no one owes me anything. But if they had told me beforehand, this is something I would never spend money on, then I would have saved myself all the work and effort. Therefore, my advice to anyone who has a friend like me asking for your opinion, clearly say whether you would buy this game or not. Do not give an assessment of whether you think others would buy it. This is only about you and what you think. That is important because otherwise, as a developer, you can very easily be misled, and in the end, that is a very bad experience. In the following days, a few people bought it, 2 returned it immediately, and that was it. I noticed that those who bought it and did not return it didn't even finish the first level. Since the whole thing has basically failed anyway and there was nothing left to lose, I made a video asking why no one wanted to play it. For reasons I still don't understand, YouTube pushed the video a bit and I got a little over 2,000 views. The comments were almost all constructive and gave me many new ideas on what I could improve, though that other players would like it as much as I do. I even wrote something about it on Reddit and received a lot of input there as well. That was motivating and filled me with false hope. I thought that if I made all these improvements by the spring sale, the existing owners would come back and continue playing, and maybe I would even find a few new players. My estimate was that it might reach 2 to 5 new players and that the existing ones might have a bit more fun with the game. The time frame was tight, and in 1 month I spent a little over 300 hours working on the game. That was a very big mistake, because I became so fixated on the update that I had no free time left. It was no longer a symbiotic relationship with my family, I had become a parasite. I just sat there implementing all the changes under high pressure, and late at night at 3 o'clock I hastily did the laundry and reduced all housework to the bare minimum. I hardly had any contact with my wife and children. I just sat there and worked. All of this even though I knew there was no major success to be gained here anymore. I was no longer useful to my family and was just a burden to everyone. I didn't earn any money with the game, no longer contributed much to the household, was silent, withdrawn and tense. But I managed to do it and complete all the changes by the spring sale, releasing the big update 3 days before the sale. From other successful developers, I had often heard that marketing is not a problem when your game fails. They are right, but I was still repeatedly told that I had done too little marketing and that was the reason why it flopped. So I wouldn't have to hear that again, I contacted a bunch of content creators and lent them a key. Whether they make a video or not is no longer in my hands. One of the content creators responded, but to a bug, no video has been made so far. I was able to find and fix the bug relatively quickly, but none of the others responded. Only 2 keys were activated and only 1 person actually played the game. Marketing doesn't save a game. Good products always succeed. If your product doesn't succeed, it's simply not good enough. A game doesn't suddenly become successful just because a streamer plays it for the viewers. The streamers play the game because they like it, because it's good. Then the players see that it's good and want to play it too. So if no content creator wants to play your game, it's the game's fault. It's like a filter. My game isn't flopping because the big creators aren't playing it. The big creators aren't playing it because it is a flop. This realization is painful for me, of course, but it's also important to face reality, because in the end it always catches up with you. The big update was released and it was completely ignored. I had at least hoped that one of the old players would come back, but that didn't happen. During the spring sale I sold 0 units and gained exactly 1 wishlist. Even my low expectations were massively overestimated. All the work I put into the game since launch was completely worthless. If you change something and no one sees it, it is the same as if you hadn't changed anything. At this point, I ended up in a dead end. I assumed that if I implement the feedback, I could somehow still save the game. But all the changes led to nothing. Of course that hurts when you realize that everything you are capable of giving is simply not enough. I have to acknowledge that even an animated wallpaper like the Coconut Simulator is simply a better product than what I created. The main problem here is of course me. I like my game, I enjoy it, I still like playing it, but the majority of players simply find it uninteresting. I can acknowledge that this is the case, but I cannot understand it. Logically, this means that I cannot evaluate a game idea, because my own perception deviates so extremely from the normal perception. Anyone who cannot read the market should not participate in it. That is why the release on Steam was such a terrible experience for me. I saw that what I am capable of is nowhere near sufficient. No one likes to find out that they simply don't have what it takes. That is an unpleasant experience. Even worse, however, is that I cannot empathize with the perspective of other players. The game looks too uninspired and generic for most players, but as long as I cannot perceive it that way myself, I cannot prevent making the same mistake over and over again. In the year 2000, the game Rune was released. It was a really cool Viking game and I got it shortly after release, even though I was actually still too young for it. My parents had to attend a parents' evening at school and my father was so angry that I was playing these stupid games that he gave me a lecture about how I was wasting my time and that I would never earn money with video games. He really put me down that evening. I had just left the caves in Rune and seen this snow-covered valley for the first time when he gave me that lecture. The enjoyment of the game was simply gone after what he said and I didn't touch the game again for 23 years. Only after his death did I take it out again and play it. Making big money is not that important to me, but I wanted to prove to myself that my father was wrong. He never really believed much in me and was always surprised when I did manage to accomplish something. But in this case, unfortunately he was right. I couldn't even earn a single dollar with my game. If you put it into the right perspective, it's actually the case that anyone who has never created a game has earned more with a game never created than I have with mine, since I managed to end up in the negative even with a no-budget game. After the game was released and flopped, I continued working on another project. I like breaking things, though I wanted to make a game around that principle. You're an employee of a demolition company that wants to work very efficiently and therefore shoots at houses with a large cannon. The goal is to demolish the house to a certain percentage with only a few shots and not damage surrounding houses. I think it's funny and my children also greatly enjoy breaking things. Unfortunately, this also happens in real life, which isn't so nice. The idea was originally to develop this title next, but I also want to take something educational from the Steam experience so that not everything is completely pointless. My gut tells me destroying objects will not be enough for players. It's not funny enough for them, and the challenge of precisely controlling the large cannon to be particularly efficient will not interest them. And this time I am listening to it. If I had simply finished my first game, played it together with my children and avoided Steam, I would not only have a great experience with many moments of success while programming, I would also have saved myself a lot of stress and a big disappointment. I could have been proud of myself for programming my own game. Instead, all I can now present is a flop that I could have prevented if I had just listened to my gut feeling. Maybe someday I will have an idea worth pursuing, but until then I prefer to program for myself. It is a much more peaceful life. So why this video? That's simple. I promised to provide updates on the project at the beginning. Yes, hardly anyone watches these updates, but if I make a promise, I want to keep it. Besides, this video also provides a good conclusion to my game. Aside from the one outlier, my views are now back at the familiar level of 10 to 50 views in the first days. Interaction is quite limited, but I think that if I ever have a really good idea and show it, these few viewers will let me know whether it's worth pursuing. It was important to me to do everything within my power, and I did that. It wasn't enough, and that hurts. I would so much like to be more than what I am. For 40 years, I haven't found my place in the world. And here too I see that I don't belong here. I belong somewhere, I just don't know where.